What's happening, crypto fam? Welcome back to Love for Crypto. I'm Scott, and it's a pleasure to have you here and a pleasure to be able to bring you this video. Last night I sat down with Lars Brunjes from Input Output Hong Kong. He is the Director of Education at the foundation that is in charge of the creation and development of the Cardano blockchain and ecosystem. It was a very interesting conversation. I actually really enjoyed it. He's a very intelligent man. We'll hopefully speak again in the future when the network has developed and grown a little bit more. But I've done a video this morning. It's currently the most decentralized network on the planet. It's got almost 72% of the ADA is now staked within the network. So without further ado, here's the interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Good evening. We are here with Lars Brunjes, the Director of Education at Input Output Hong Kong, a very intelligent man, has a PhD in pure mathematics, which I'm absolutely fascinated about. Sadly, we're not here to talk about mathematics. We're going to talk a little bit about Cardano, use cases, incentives, languages, the Ouroboros protocol, and whatnot. So without further ado, Lars, I'll let you introduce yourself. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at IOHK, please?
Sure. So thank you very much for the invitation, Scott. So I'm Lars. As you mentioned, I'm a mathematician originally. And at IOHK, which is the software company that develops Cardano, I started as a Haskell developer. Haskell is the programming language we use for most of our things. And then they were looking for people to do a Haskell course for some Greek students. And because I had always loved teaching at university, I volunteered. And that went very well. And so then I got into this role of education director. And since then have done courses all over the world, like very intense 3-month Haskell courses on Barbados and in Ethiopia. And this year, or last year, 2020, it would have been Mongolia, but then due to the pandemic, that happened virtually, but at least we did the course anyway. But I still also enjoy programming, of course, and technical work. So I'm also involved like in the design of the Cardano incentives. And I have programmed a bit for the Cardano node as well. So I try to like keep in touch with the technical work as well, so that I know what I'm actually talking about when I'm teaching.
Fantastic. You mentioned Haskell there, a programming language.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give a little bit of a brief description as to what that is? Because I'll be honest, I've actually never heard it before in my life until I watched a video with you. I've actually it's not a language I've heard very often.
Right, it's certainly not mainstream, but it is quite old already. I mean, from 1990, I think, around 1990. So it's 30 years old now, and it was basically there was some interest back in the 80s in functional programming, which is like very mathematical or inspired by mathematics. And but all the universities had different experimental languages they used for their research, and then they decided it would be better to have like one unified language that they can all use. So they got together and created Haskell. So it originally was just like used for research, but over the years it's become, I mean not mainstream, but very usable. So there are thousands of libraries, so all the stuff you want of a language, like, I don't know, HTML and writing web servers and text processing and all these stuff, all the stuff you need to do actual useful things, that's available. And I mean, it's a very nice, as I said, mathematical language. So you can write high security code, and it's very concise. You need much less source code than when you would write the same program in other languages. And
right, interesting.
And it's also interesting because I mean interesting people, not me, but other people that are interested in Haskell, they tend to be quite interesting. And so you get like an interesting crowd when you look for Haskell developers. So that's another nice benefit.
Fantastic. So can you explain or go through some ADA and Cardano use cases?
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, first of all, it's right now it's a cryptocurrency. So you can do what you would expect of a cryptocurrency, send value from here to there. And due to the fact that it's proof of stake instead of proof of work, it's orders of magnitude cheaper than like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So basically, you can do your basic cryptocurrency stuff the same way, but cheaper, much cheaper than with other cryptocurrencies. And of course, as we mentioned in the beginning, so we are getting quite close to Mary and to Gogang, which will add native tokens and smart contracts on top of it. And then, of course, the sky is the limit. Then you can do all things like decentralized finance and supply chain and tokens, NFTs. I mean, whatever you can do in Ethereum, just much cheaper and much faster.
Yeah, it's because that's what a lot of people are waiting for, aren't they? They're all about the speed, the reliability, and as you've mentioned in a few comments, security.
Right.
With the ecosystem growing and updating all the time, can you explain what kind of incentives people that can draw people to actually use the platform? Because a lot of people in crypto at the moment, they just grab a token, they grab a coin, and they're holding it for 5 to 10 years, and they don't really care. And it's because not too much information is coming out. And that's why what we're doing now, raising a little bit of awareness. So what kind of incentives would there be for someone to say, look, this is in a way how you could use the platform?
I mean, of course, the most basic part, which is actually quite nice, is that because it's proof of stake, you get rewards for staking. And that is nicely done. So it's very easy actually for everybody who has some ADA to stake. So you don't need any technical know-how or anything. And I mean, it's, of course, you won't buy a Lamborghini with the staking rewards, but I mean, it's more than you get on a bank account these days. So that's already quite nice for just doing that. I mean, just getting some ADA and staking them and earning some rewards.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well in it for the amount of people that are actually just sat with idle crypto. It's idle value. It's the more people that start realizing that that value is just idle, and if they stake it somewhere, it can not only give them rewards, but it can be used by someone else in collateral, with loaning, with other incentives for them, really, couldn't it? So exactly. It is opening many doors.
Right.
I actually staked the other day. I don't think it's quite gone on yet. I've got to wait for the
I think it takes 10 days or so. Yeah, 1 or 2
yeah,
weeks.
It was 9 days. So I'm waiting. Block 250, I think, are going on. So the Epoch 250. So I managed to do it with Daedalus. So we're due an upgrade on that wallet very soon. Can you talk us a little bit through not just how we stake, but the differences we might see post Mary update?
Right. I mean, Mary is about native tokens. So, and that is right. So, I mean, tokens are of course very important and very popular on Ethereum, for example, but on Ethereum, they are just implemented as smart contracts. So, I mean, you have a smart contract and the smart contract knows who owns how many tokens. So it's just a program that can basically deal with tokens. But tokens are fundamentally different than Ether on Ethereum. And we will have very soon these native tokens. So where basically there's not really a difference between sending ADA and sending tokens. So people can create tokens and send them, and it's basically treated like any other currency on the Cardano network. I mean, ADA still has a special role because rewards are paid in ADA and transaction fees are paid in ADA. But apart from that, there's basically no difference. And that is coming very soon. And in this Daedalus upgrade that came out today, I think, or yesterday, that will then be supported. So then in the wallet, you can see also the tokens that you own and can send tokens and so on.
Superb. I was actually quite impressed and relieved that there didn't seem to be a limit on the amount of ADA I could stake, because I didn't really put a lot down. It was cheap to do. Straight on the wallet. A couple of questions to a few friends about saturation and stuff, so I knew where I was going and I was getting in a good pool. But yeah, it was so easy, as opposed to Ether-based ones with regards to your Uniswap and others. The fees are just so extortionate. I struggle to see how them platforms can actually progress in the future with something like Cardano and other things coming out that are going to drastically reduce them fees and the friction. So it's going to be quite interesting to see it moving forward. The governing protocol of the ecosystem, is it the Ouroboros? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes.
So could you explain it in a somewhat simple way that the everyday person would kind of, if they get proof of work to proof of stake, then if they haven't got that information, then I don't know what they're doing on my channel. But yeah, if we just try and keep it as simple as possible, if we can, please.
Sure. I mean, first, let me say that, I mean, you mentioned security before, and we were actually the first cryptocurrency that where the protocol is based on peer-reviewed research. So that's very important for us, that we base everything on science. So all our software is based on scientific publications that have actually gone through the usual process of peer review, where other professors from other universities look at it and vet it and critique it and so on. So yeah, so it has a very high standard of security. But to understand it, I mean, the way consensus works in general is somehow, I mean, you have this problem, you have thousands of nodes and they all add stuff to the blockchain, and somehow that would be utter chaos if they couldn't agree on the order in which the blocks should be added. And the way it works is normally there's some sort of lottery where one node wins the lottery for a round, and then he has the right to add the next block. And the way it works in Bitcoin and Ethereum is that these lotteries are done by proof of work. So you get these crypto puzzles, these hashing puzzles, and then you you try to break them, and whoever breaks it first, he wins and he can add the block. And in proof of stake, and in particular in Ouroboros, this is replaced. So there is no proof of work. Instead, it's just basically really a lottery. It's as if you, by having stake, you basically buy a lottery ticket, which is, your chances of winning are higher the more stake you have. That's proof, because it's proof of stake. And then there's just a random drawing. So basically you pick a random number, and the randomness comes from the blockchain itself. So that's, of course, I mean, tricky to get right and prove that it's secure and so on. But in principle, so each second there is a lottery. So, and then the more stake you have, the higher chances you have to win. So one winner is decided, and then that winner can produce the next block. And that happens every second. And that's how Ouroboros works. There are some additions, of course, but the reason that it's so much more energy efficient and sustainable and cheap than proof of work is because, I mean, the costs in Bitcoin and Ethereum don't come from running a blockchain. They come from solving these puzzles, because they are on purpose made hard, so that you need like crazy hardware to actually have a chance of solving them. And whereas we in Ouroboros, you only have to run the protocol, which is peanuts. I mean, you can do that on a Raspberry Pi actually. So you need many orders of magnitude less to just compute whether you won the lottery or not. And then, of course, there's lots of cool crypto involved to make that secure and fair and all of that. But that's the basic idea. And right, and we talked about staking rewards earlier. So
yeah,
not everybody has.
Right. I was literally going to ask, how does the protocol then link to staking? And can you give a little oversight as to why you'd have to wait 9 to 10? You have to wait the 2 blocks or epochs, as they're called in the ecosystem.
Sure. So first of all, I mentioned it's 1 second. So these lotteries happen every second, but we split time into so-called epochs. That's 5 days. So rewards are calculated for this. So it's not like in Bitcoin where you get a reward for every block that you produce. So you have to wait for 5 days, and basically it's so it's the total then over those 5 days, and then you get the rewards. So that's an epoch. And you don't have to do it yourself. So if you, I mean, you can run a node yourself, and it's, as I said, very cheap. You can in principle do it on a Raspberry Pi, but you don't have to. Instead, you can also delegate your stake to a stake pool that actually runs the node for you. And there it's important to note that delegating does not mean that you give your money away. So if you delegate to a stake pool, you still have control over your funds, so you can spend them at any time. You just basically give the voting rights away. So you delegate the right to participate in these lotteries to the stake pool. You don't give them the money, just the lottery ticket, basically.
Yeah, so there's not really clarity.
Right. So there's not really a risk for you. The biggest risk is that you don't get rewards for those 5 days if something goes wrong, but you never lose your money. And Right. So then the stake pools collect all these delegations, and then the more and all this delegated stake counts to their own stake, and the more stake they have, the higher the chances they have to win a lottery and produce blocks. And then after 5 days, basically depending on how big the stake pool is and how many blocks they produced, and various other factors, for example, how much money they put into their own pools. And then it's calculated how much the stake pool gets. And then automatically the protocol takes care of distributing the money also to all the delegators. So in Bitcoin, the Bitcoin mining pool, that's like a private off-chain thing that, I mean, there's a private agreement that the mining pools agree how they split the money amongst the pool members. In Cardano, that's part of the protocol. So you automatically get your rewards. And the reason it takes a while is because we have to take this snapshot. So at a given time, each epoch, basically there's a snapshot that determines how much money everybody delegated to what stake pool. And that is then taken to do the calculations, how many rewards are paid. And this snapshot is only once an epoch. So basically only once an epoch that changes. And that's, and I think you have to wait 2 snapshots because of the way the protocol works. That has to be somewhat in the past, because as you know, there's this confirmation thing that you also know from Bitcoin. You have to wait a bit until you can be sure that your transaction went through, and that same thing is in Ouroboros. So we have to be sure that this snapshot doesn't change anymore, so that there's no way that it will ever roll back. So we have to wait like 5 days. So we take the snapshot like a couple of days in the past to be sure that that is forever set in stone and won't change anymore. Therefore, there are some delays involved. So we have to wait a bit in the beginning. But then, of course, once you get your first rewards, then you get them every 5 days, like clockwork. So it's only in the beginning that you have to wait a bit.
Superb, superb. So quite a bit of fundamentals there, really. And with regards to how this is all going to work, I believe there's 2 languages in Plutus and Marlow.
Yes, actually,
is that correct?
That is correct, but there will be even more. So we launched a little test net in December. So we also want to support things like Solidity, but not on Cardano itself, but on a side chain. So we have like different approaches. So people that are used to Ethereum and used to Solidity then can also do that, not on the main chain, but on a more like Ethereum-like chain that will then, where you can program in Solidity and then that communicates with Cardano as a side chain. But you are right, our native programming languages are Plutus and Marlow, and they will come out hopefully in summer. I don't know exactly when, I think end of Q2 or so. And Plutus is basically the general purpose flagship language that can do everything from CryptoKitties to DeFi. And Marlow is specialized for financial contracts. So Marlow is very simple and can't do anything, can't do CryptoKitties, but what it can do, you can have very high guarantees that it's secure. It's an extremely simple language so that you can prove like certain properties of these contracts, that no money is lost and that bad things won't happen and so on. So that's the 2 things.
Basically keeping it simple with numbers.
Yes.
That
yes.
is as simple as we can say it, whereas the Plutus would do visuals, audios, all your kind of NFTs and the rest of it, because it's the way people might actually think about that.
Right, and actually Marlow is implemented on top of Plutus, so Marlow will just be a very complicated Plutus contract.
Right.
And you can also then later in future, I mean, Marlow is a so-called DSL, domain-specific language, in this case, the domain of finance. And we also have ideas to add other domain-specific languages like legal DSL or things like that. So later, this idea that you, on top of Plutus, can implement specific languages that can do one thing very well. We can do that for more than just Marlow. But in the beginning, it will be Plutus and Marlow.
Right. So you mentioned CryptoKitties there, which is obviously the biggest one on the Ethereum blockchain. But how similar are assets on and within the Cardano ecosystem going to be to, say, like your ERC20s and your 721s? And is the other 1151 the new one they've just done? I think, I don't know. But again, this is why it's getting hard for people to get their head around it and keep track of them all, really, because they're all so different.
I mean, if you like look at the at the metal, at the low level, it's different, of course, because the I mean, Ethereum is account based and Cardano is like Bitcoin UTXO based. So the details are different, but I think for your average user, it will basically be the same experience. So I mean, you have your tokens in your wallet and you can send them, and you don't have to worry about how it's actually implemented. And I mean, we also plan to make it easy for people to transfer their Ethereum tokens to equivalent Cardano tokens. And I don't know whether you heard that a week ago, I think Singularity Net, they had that's this AI platform on top of Ethereum. They have an AGI token where people can use the token to buy artificial intelligence services or rent them.
Interesting.
And they had a vote that just last week that they will mint 1 billion of these AGI tokens on Cardano now. So they will stay on Ethereum, but they will also basically double their, mint another billion of their tokens on Cardano. And for the users, it will, the tokens will more or less be exchangeable, except of course that on Cardano everything will be faster and cheaper, as we said before. But I think the Cardano tokens will be able to do at least everything that Ethereum tokens can do, from NFT over ERC20 and all these things. So I think your user experience won't be different.
Yeah, I think interoperability and cross-platform asset swaps in the future it's going to be needed, really.
Yes.
And it's not just should we do this? Should we not do this? I think at the end of it, when we consider an internet of value and the amount of assets that are actually popping up, and we want the value and the ownership to be able to move as fast as data, then we do need the interoperability. It's interesting you said a side chain with Solidity as well. That's because, again, it just increases interoperability across the board, doesn't it, for internet of value moving forward. A big thing within that, identities. So what do or will digital identities look like on Cardano, and what do they mean for you? Are you excited about them? Are you a little curious?
Yes, definitely. We have a partnership with the nation of Georgia and universities in Georgia to try out our Atala Prism. That's our identity platform. So there you will basically get your government identity on the blockchain and also university diplomas. And then the idea is that you can then, if you apply for a job, for example, you can then share what you want, for example, your diplomas with the employer, so he can verify that you indeed have this degree. So that's like our pilot, it's first deployed in earnest to try out the identity system. And then, of course, there are myriads more things you can think of where it can be useful, especially in the developing world. Or if you think of places like, like civil war, Syria or so, where records get lost. Of course, it's incredibly valuable if you have something in a permanent form on the blockchain.
Yeah. Immutable, as they say. I see it all coming together. Like you say, first your government identity, and then your qualifications, your driver's license, your dental record, your criminal record, your medical records, all being accessed through the same identity, which again will need to be interoperable with different systems. It makes you wonder which governments are going to recognize which systems. It's funny, like my head never really went to the work and the job bit like yours did then, but then it has me thinking about references and everything, the amount of times you have to ring people for different references. But I suppose once it's there on the identity, it's there. People don't need to keep emailing Jimmy to see what Dave was like working. It's
and of course, it's also very important that you own your data, so you decide with whom you want to share what. But that, of course, is also part of how that will work. It wouldn't if you wouldn't want maybe your dental records, but not your medical records for all the world to be out there to see. But of course, that's part of that you can say you want to share this now with this doctor, but not with your employer, for example.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what data people would actually be willing to just share outright straight away, and then down the line share even more. Because at first it'd be like, oh no, I'm not sharing. And then you could be like, well, I just told her what I buy from this place and they gave me £100. They'd be like, what do you mean you paid for your data? So it's going to be extremely interesting to see that play out and see people actually being not only just rewarding for moving idle value into a stake pool, but being rewarded for actually using platforms, submitting data into platforms. Yeah, it's extremely exciting to me. I actually can't. I say to people all the time, I can't wait till 2025. You know, so it's just moved on a little bit. Kind of wishing my life away, but I am super excited about the Internet of Value. Not just NFTs like crypto kitties and stuff, but within games, within interactive movies moving forward. What would you say excites you the most overall about distributed ledger technology?
I think the fact that it somehow gives an equal playing field, so like both underprivileged people in like in Europe, but of course also in the developing world, that it's much easier than for people to participate. I mean, in learning and in finance, and that people can get microloans and just that it's, I mean, much easier and cheaper to, I mean, communicate and exchange value and data. I think that's quite exciting and quite powerful.
Yeah, I think eventually we'll. I mean, it's not that I don't want disasters, but I think eventually we're going to see a disaster on a scale we've seen in the past, but where in the past we've struggled to help as fast as we should have been able to. In the future, aid will be there in seconds. And I don't think people who have never lived in a place like that, it's all right for me here in my bedroom of a house in Manchester, England, and we live in a world where we very rarely have to live with things like that. But for the people on the other side of it, it's still actually, I can imagine it being quite unbelievable for them that they're about to move into a world where digitalization is going to completely lift them up and elevate their life and social status and the health. Whereas everyone in my society is just like, I don't want to be tracked. I don't want this. I don't want that. They're like, oh. And then you can imagine everyone on the other side of the coin just like, please track me, help me. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like I say, it absolutely fascinates me. So we'll wind down a little bit now. Just if you don't mind me getting a little personal.
Sure.
Have you got anything else other than the Cardano and input-output education stuff you do? Have you got anything else you'd like to plug? Have you got a book coming out or anything? You never know with people that you talk to.
No, I mean, I did write a book about Plutus 2 years ago now, but that is unfortunately a bit outdated by now. So as soon as, I mean, our developers are still busy adding finishing touches to Plutus. So I hope I'll update that at some time.
Did you write a video on write a video? Did you write a book on geometry?
Yeah, no, well, arithmetic geometry, which is not really, has not much to do with, yeah, that's basically my PhD thesis. That
nice. Nice, very nice.
Yeah, no, I love mathematics. And that is, I mean, really cool about this job as well, because as I said, it's not just the teaching, it's also like the incentive scheme with the saturation and all of that. I mean, I was involved there, so that was quite, it's nice to be able to also use mathematics for something in the real world. And most mathematicians, I mean, most mathematicians are not so lucky. I mean, they work for, I don't know, banks, insurance companies. So it's, so I count myself lucky that I can do actually interesting mathematics in my
how did you actually end up going down the cryptography DLT route? Because I'm actually quite amazed at how many techie computer guys I meet that know nothing about blockchain and crypto. It's actually quite incredible.
For me, what's more it wasn't actually the crypto and the blockchain, it was more the Haskell, because I always loved programming and exotic languages. So I've been doing Haskell for 20 years now, on and off. And so IOHK was one of the few companies that were actually hiring Haskell developers. So for me, it was that, not in the first place the crypto. But of course, I've come to appreciate it, and I think it's very cool what all it can do.
Nice, nice. So regarding your education, just before we wind down, I'll let you get off and have your tea. I need to have mine as well. But who are the who's the education for, and where can it be accessed?
Right. I mean, it's of course also internal training of our engineers and so on. But I mean, the biggest thing that we have done until now was actually what I mentioned before, these courses in developing countries. So the idea, our idea is always that it's a mistake to do this classical mistake that you just go somewhere and then say, look, listen to me, I can solve all your problems. So we have this idea, that's stupid, and you should like listen to the people that actually live there and encounter the problems every day. So the idea is that we go there and then teach them Haskell, and then I mean, like the brightest students at some given place, and then they can, I mean, they know best what problems their community has, and then if they then end up working for us, then they can stay in their own countries. They don't have to like move to the US or to Europe. They can have a cool job where they are, and then basically work on the Cardano ecosystem, solving their own problems from their local communities. So that's this idea why we go to developing countries and teach Haskell. And of course, we also in the last courses, we also started then teaching a bit of Plutus and Malo. And of course, now I fully expect that that now when Gorgon comes out with Plutus and Malo, then of course we will also do all sorts of training programs for everybody that wants to learn. So I mentioned the book, but we'll also do Udemy courses and work with universities to, I mean, make it as easy as possible for people to participate.
Yeah, it is worth noting as well that there's quite a lot of content on YouTube.
Right.
I've found a bit, and on IOHK's websites as well. I've seen a little bit on there, and there's too much for me to go through in a week. So
yes, I mean, we have a developers portal, and there's also a staking course if you want to run your own stake pool on Cardano, a staking school, where I also helped recording some of the videos. So there's quite a lot of material available.
Been looking at the stake pool course a little bit. I've got my eye on that. Especially now you mentioned it can be done potentially on a Raspberry Pi.
Mm-hmm.
One of them next to me.
That's no lie. I mean, there was a guy at we had 2 years ago in Miami, our company summit, and there was a guy that had a Raspberry Pi, and he gave a talk about running the node on a Raspberry Pi.
Do you remember the model? Possible. Is it a 4 or 3 or 4?
No, I don't, but I can look it up. But it was quite impressive.
No, it is. It's considering for anyone who's seen a miner before and seen what else I mean, for example, we're big in XRP, Internet of Value, the community nodes. To run an XRP node, you need a PC, a 32 gig RAM, and God knows what memory. It's bigger than the PC I'm actually. This is the biggest PC I've got in my house, and it's twice the size of this that I'd need just to run an XRP production node and validator. So it goes without saying there straight away, as cheap and as effective as XRP and the XRPL is, you can't run your node as easy as you can on Cardano. So all competing, all moving forward, pushing an Internet of Value and interoperability. I can't wait. Like I say, I literally can't wait. 2025. I can't wait to be 40 years old. Can't wait for the next few years to go for it to just progress a little bit and see how much it actually changes the world.
Yes, I'm also very much looking forward to Plutus being out there. I mean, I think Ethereum is interesting. I mean, the things they do, the DeFi and so on, that's all fascinating. But it's just no fun playing with it because, I mean, it's just crazy, the transaction fees you have to pay. So I can't wait for Cardano where you can do all the same things or more, but for like reasonable fees.
Exactly, a fraction of the cost. Yes. Let's hope so. But that's what people are saying. It's not that people are expecting to create a load of assets of value without putting actually any value into it. You've got to expect to put a little bit in if you're taking some out. But the Ethereum fees at times, I was with someone last night that was doing a rareable NFT. And at around 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock PM, it was $130 to set up just a couple of these NFTs. And I actually have to look into it a little bit more, but he managed to wait till something happened within the Ethereum ecosystem. And the fee had actually come down to $30 for the same assets. And I'm sat there thinking like that, how's that sustainable long term? I generate like there's people that are my age are looking at that and they'll be like, oh, but they're NFTs, aren't they? Surprised you got to pay to get in, mate. And it's like, just no. The next generation are just going to be like, it's not going to wash. We want no friction and I want convenience.
And there's another thing actually that on Ethereum, it can happen that you have to pay the fee, but your transaction still fails. I mean, you have to pay the gas and then something can go wrong. That's just the way it works because of the way this account-based system works. I mean, you think it should be fine, but then while you are sending it, somebody else changes something. And then when your transaction gets there, they take your gas, but you still fail. And that also won't be possible on Cardano. I mean, transactions can fail, but then you don't have to pay a fee. So you only pay if you actually get what you wanted to get, which is also a nice touch, I find.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, I'm really much looking forward to that, all the possibilities.
Yeah, I think the possibilities are endless. I sit there at times and my mind just starts running and I end up in 2023 thinking about Star Trek credits instead of currencies and all the rest of it. So I just legitimately can't wait. How many more updates on Cardano before we go? What have we got after Mary and...
I'm not sure whether there's any technical thing in between, but I think the next big milestone is then Gogong with Plutus in summer after Mary. So Mary should be now end of this month or beginning of March, and then Gogong. Yeah, I mean, I may be wrong. There might be some minor things in between, but that's the big milestones. Yeah. And then of course we also have. I mean, we talked a lot about smart contracts, but we also have this catalyst thing going, where I mean, then after Gogong, the next thing I think is Voltaire, and that is where the community can vote on proposals and vote on the treasury, and that is also already starting now with pilot projects. So I think we just announced that we give $500,000 away for projects that the community can vote on. So this voting happens also on Cardano. So you can register on Cardano, register your wallet for voting, and then you can participate and determine which projects get the money and how much money and so on. So that's also coming.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah, I'll have a look at that when that drops. Definitely. Well, Lars, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we can talk again in the future when we've got a little bit more stable internet of value and we're all passing assets between each other like it's nothing. But yeah, I just want to say thanks for doing it. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully the community appreciates it as much as I did. And you take care, mate.
Take care. Thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. You're welcome.
Well, what a conversation, what a network, what a man. He was really genuine. I really enjoyed speaking to him. It's really exciting what's moving forward now for me with the Internet of Value. NFTs coming big on the scene, We've spoken in the past about not only gaming, but within movies, interactive content with NFTs. It's going to be huge in the gaming. It's going to be huge either way. Having an ERC type 20 token on the Cardano blockchain very soon, and the other assets as well. If you're not too versed on it, I'd suggest looking up between ERC20, ERC is it 721, and the new 115. We mentioned it in the video. But yeah, that was a really good conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and there'll hopefully be more in the future. Stay tuned, and thank you. You know the score. Invest in yourself, invest in the Internet of Value. Live long and hodl it all. Peace.